A couple of days ago, Halo Studios released a new bunch of lore relating to the ending of Halo Infinite's campaign, and going through a couple of things that we all theorized and speculated about during the campaign, and gave us some answers to what those things actually are. One of those specifically being the ancient stones that were scattered around Zeta Halo. Now, this is not something any of us were expecting, and I am pretty excited to go through this information with you guys in this video because there is a lot to cover. And there's also some actual voice lines from Despondent Pyre going through what these rings are, and the fact that she feels kind of guilty about some of the things that she had done throughout the time, specifically mentioning some very interesting things that happened in Zeta Halo's history that I'm so excited to cover in this video for you guys. But let me know your thoughts and opinions down below of what you think of all of this information that we're going to go through in today's video, and if you've got anything else along with the theories I'm going to give you guys and obviously go through it. If you've got any other theories or things you think could happen in future Halo games, books, novels, even spin-offs, then let me know down below in the comments, because I'm so gassed to go through this in this video. But leave a like if you do go on to enjoy today's video, guys. It'd be very much appreciated. Be sure to subscribe as well to the channel, because as and when new Halo stuff comes out, of course we're covering it here on the channel. But let's dive straight in to some new Halo lore. Halo: The Whispers from the Pyre takes place at the very end of the Halo Infinite campaign, May 2560, immediately following the death of Escharum at the hands of course, the Master Chief. This story follows two characters in particular, excluding Despondent Pyre for now, and that is a Sangheili study master and his Kigyar companion, in order to try and uncover the secrets of Zeta Halo's mysterious ring totems.
It is our great burden, is it not? To guide the preservation of the galaxy, even to the ends of erasing it. Weapons of last resort, built by my makers many a millennia ago to stave off the great parasite. This ring is but one of 7, designed to preserve life, designed to destroy it. One of 7. But this ring is different. Reforged from the remains of an earlier effort, it possesses abilities not shared by its siblings. This ring has many secrets, some even worth dying for. Many in my place would see this charge as a burden, custodian of one of the galaxy's greatest marvels and greatest perils. I admit, I often found myself feeling out of place with others like me. The monitors of the other installations seem to share similar perspectives and experiences amongst each other, but I've always been an outcast among them. By both design and by birthright. A different type of caretaker for a very different type of ring. While 07's integral place within the array is most unquestionable, its history and original composition allow for far more direct applications. Applications invoked in order to uphold the mantle or betray it.
Despondent Pyre was almost confused when speaking about Zeta Halo. The ring is one of 7 designed to preserve life and also destroy it, referring to, of course, the primordial in that sense. Preserving it would be rather the ancient humans or even the endless in some capacity. But this ring is different to the others. As we said, the history ingrained within is very different to any of the other Halo rings, old and new, that's ever existed. So Despondent Pyre feels very much like a different kind of monitor in that respect, one with a greater importance than any of the others. Not only because she knows the horrors of this ring already, and she's had to familiarise herself with that over the years and years and years that she has been the ring's monitor, but she knows about the history of the primordial. She knows about the Flood, Mendicant Bias, the Endless of course, and their future. Along with that, we have the ancient humans that were once on the ring, and the Master Builder, Faber. But now, because of the Endless and their future, which is also another big mystery in the Halo universe, this ring doesn't just hold horrors of the past, but even now, buried within the silences beneath the surface of Zeta Halo, are horrors worse than we can imagine, And even as Despondent Pi has said to us, horrors worse than the flood. Study Master Char Yaham retracted his semicircular datapad and clacked his mandibles in satisfaction as he scrutinized the great stone ring artifact that lay before him. Wisps of mist-like blue energy would typically indicate it had clusters of fragmented data to access, whereas ghostly voices from the past would slough off their digital embellishment to offer a fractured testimony. But this particular arcane curio had now fallen dark and silent. Though this artifact appeared to have been accessed recently, it still bore latent data streams that were able to extract. Study Master Yaham turned to Dakra, a Kigyar skirmisher of a group known as the Mind Talon, with whom had found himself partnered in their joint efforts to uncover the many ancient secrets of Zeta Halo, working of course for the Banished at this point. More from Monitor, Dakra said, running a hand through her plume of red feathers. Curious mention of the Oth Koron's past. Reforged unique abilities and applications. Great prestige for us if we find. Yaham nodded in agreement. Installation 07, designated Oth Koron by the Banished and Zeta Halo by the Forerunners, had a fascinating history that they had only just scratched the surface of. Finding that history was one matter, but the process of interrogation and interpretation of data was another thing entirely. The Sangheili Study Master found that he was developing a fondness for Dakra's company of late. He had come to understand that, like many Kigyar, she possessed a great drive for profit, but rather than seeking abundance in riches, profit for Dakra meant accumulating knowledge. In the days of the Covenant, that had been largely the singular domain of the Sanshayum, but within the Banished, it was just one way of many that anybody could make themselves useful. The mystery of the stone ring totems was something that they had discovered within a lunar cycle of occupying the Oth Koron, and both Study Master Yaham and Dakra were determined to be the first to discover the truth of these strange artifacts. It had taken very little work to convince the battle officer Zeratus to establish a dedicated research outpost in the local area, so they went off and did exactly that. From his position standing near the summit of an alpine mountain which had been split in two by the tyrant's recent rending of the ring, he and Dakra had an excellent line of sight over many nearby landmarks. To the north, the ring's vista revealed an ocean of stars, whereas the Study Master had looked into the abyss, attempting to trace the division between the dark space and the azure sky. He had been moved to dizziness. At the farthest end of those suspended columns lay the silent auditorium, the site of the tyrant's immolation, which was still slowly reforming. Immediately northeast was a beacon tower that had been visited several day cycles ago, where his correspondence with Dakra had enabled him to translate excerpts of Despondent Pi's data. From there, the winding roads travelled eastward, where rising stacks of hexagonal pillars, the building blocks of the installation's artificial landscape, led to the outpost that he had come to call home. No response from Annex Ridge, Dakra squawked, having apparently attempted to contact the outpost through their native link, while the Study Master surveyed the horizon. That is concerning, Yaham said. Despite the supply crates strewn around the vicinity of the ring-shaped artifacts, no allied Banished forces had been here to meet them. Have done all we can here. Should return to Annex Ridge, see progress of artifacts there. With nothing left to avail them in this location, the Study Master and the Skirmisher began their descent of the mountain. Further to the north, the towering form of an inactive Reformation spire loomed over another fractured island, where 3 Gorespike anti-air platforms laid in ruins. What exactly happened to them? Neither he nor the Skirmisher knew, but it seemed that the remnants of the UNSC were suddenly growing bolder. Yaham pushed the feeling of concern to the back of his mind for what also hung in the sky above were several dreadnoughts, including the ghost of Malkadyar, which sat directly above them and their current position. Under the leadership of Escharum, the Banished owned this area of Orthcaron. As the dirt track road delivered them to the bottom of the mountain, they were met by a welcome sight of half a dozen Jirohani warriors, accompanying a half-laden warskiff. "Brothers," Yaham called out, unable to deny a feeling of relief at seeing them. "Greetings to you all. I am Study Master Char Yaham of Annex Ridge, and this is my fellow researcher, Dakra of the Mind Talons." "Well met, Study Master," one of the Jirohani stepped forward. "I am Evacus. Have been ordered to redeploy with us too?" "We have not." The Sangheili fumbled a response to the unexpected query. "Forgive me, Dakar and I have been out of contact for several day cycles now. What news is there?" The Jirohani shifted uncomfortably. "You have not heard?" Yaham and Dakar exchanged puzzled looks. "The House of Reckoning has fallen. Warchief Escharum is dead, killed by the demon." The Study Master splayed his mandibles, unable to comprehend the enormity of what he had just heard and its vast implications. It was said that Atriox had perished to eliminate the Tyrant, the human artificial intelligence who had sought to rule the galaxy and destroy Doisak to make an example of Atriox's defiance. In his place, it was Escharum who continued to serve the War Master's will and carry on his legacy. Both of them gone? There would be consequences for the Banished. Of that, he had no doubt. "The loss of the War Chief is felt by us all." Yaham placed a hand on Evacus' shoulder. "He was Das Kalo to all of us. It is said that he died well." Evacus spoke with great resolve. "For a Jirohani, that is all that matters." "Our people have that much in common." Yaham bowed his head. "We were about to return to Annex Ridge. The secrets we have been excavating from the ring may prove vital to our continued domination over this installation. Beware, Study Master. UNSC forces have retaken many of their nearby operating bases, and Riven Gate is no longer under our firm control. I do not know what has become of Annex Ridge, but our enemies will undoubtedly seek to claim the bounty of knowledge. Do not be surprised if the demon has laid waste to that as well." "Join us," Dakar spoke up. "Annex Ridge must hold. Our orders come from Horatius himself. We are to redeploy to the Silent Auditorium immediately." As Evacus spoke, the unmistakable blare of the Phantom's horn sounded over the hills. "We cannot come with you, but we can give you an opportunity to get back to Annex Ridge with speed." Evacus gestured to the warskiff. "They would no longer need it. Glory and spoils to your clan." Dakar beat a fist to her armoured chest. "May we meet again in victory," Yaham concluded. But as he met Evacus' gaze, it was clear that they both recognised the platitude. Where the Jirohani were going, they would most certainly not meet again. Not in this life. Study Master Yakaram took up the driver's seat of the warskiff, and Dakar entered the front-facing plasma cannon. The transport suspension track lifted off the ground, and the vehicle sped forward, following the dirt road. Neither he nor his companion looked back as the Jirohani boarded their Phantom and were ferried away. Strange to see, Dakar broke the contemplative silence between them. Sangheili and the Jirohani getting along. She was quite right. During their time in the Covenants, the Jirohani had quickly become rivals to the Sangheili. Many of their kind, even Atriox himself, had been used on the front line as mountainous walls of flesh and muscle thrown at the humans, often on orders of the Sangheili commanders, aka the Prophets, spurred on by their newly found zealotry. Having been lifted from the ashes of endless civil wars on their homeworld Doisak, many gladly went to their deaths with the promise of divine transcendence through their service of the Great Journey. Seeking to better understand the strange allies, the Study Master had pored over records aboard many banished dreadnoughts, which had themselves become not just engines of war, but also cultural and historical preserves. His findings had been illuminating. Younger generations had eagerly embraced the Covenant and its faith, disenfranchised by clan conflicts and weary of misuse by their pack leaders. in their fights of territory already spoiled by older wars. Upon learning this, seeing the pattern of how history had so quickly been repeated, the study master understood precisely why such animosity towards the Sangheili had come to be. But then, there were elders like Escharum who were skeptical of the prophet's promises and laid the foundation for all the banished represented today. From the spark of Atriox's rebellion against the Covenant, a fragile coalition of scavengers and mercenaries had been consolidated into a true confederacy. The Banished inspired loyalty in all who sought to break their chains, and Atriox held neither grudge nor prejudice towards any who pledged service, even if the absolution wasn't always reflected within the ranks. Indeed, Yaham agreed, realizing his mind was wandering again. But our people have much in common. That, at least, is what the Banished have helped us to see, now that our days of servitude to the Covenant at last lie behind us. The study master turned the warskiff off to the right as he reached the fork in the road marked by a communication pylon. These devices, as we know, were meant to relay messages from a banished grunt named Glibnub, and it was with some unspoken relief that Yaham saw the humans had inadvertently laid this to waste. They were all pretty funny. I don't think they were too bad, eh? A stack of Forerunner Foundation materials lay ahead, atop of which a UNSC forward operating base was found. Evicus had warned us that the UNSC forces may have occupied this area, but as the warskiff cruised past the base, it appeared to be empty. This made sense to the study master, as tactically it was poorly placed for any kind of assault. If the humans were to strike, it would undoubtedly be from their base, which lay on higher ground, closer to the Annex Ridge. Turning the warskiff to the left, Yam continued on for a handful of centals, before parking the vehicle on an exposed cluster of Forerunner stacks. As they disembarked, they found the gate to Annex Ridge completely open, and its lower structure appeared to be vacant. The pair immediately boarded the ground floor elevator and began to ascend. Its movement was much slower than Yaham would have liked, but he took the moment to keep his mind focused. As they reached the top, they were immediately struck by the scene of devastation that awaited them. Banished corpses. All of the species were strewn across the upper level. Pools of blood had dried into dark stains on the mud. Perhaps the most somber element of this was that most of the bodies appeared to be partially submerged into the ground, as if Zeta Halo's environment was already spurring soils to grow over them, reclaiming the bodies and making them part of the ring itself. At the far end of the outpost, a siege hauler transport holding 2 stone rings lay in ruins next to a ruptured fuel silo that still was burning with crackling fire. If what Evicus said was true, Study Master Yaham exhaled as he and the skirmisher ran towards the craft of its landing pad. Then this was perpetrated by one Spartan. All it takes, Dakra concluded. Then it seemed Evicus was correct, and we must be swift, Yaham said, resolved and purposeful in his voice. We do not know how much time we have before they turn their attentions back to this location. Its secrets are no doubt just as valuable as their kind as they are to us. Its secrets are no doubt just as valuable to their kind as they are to us. They finally turned their attention to the lower pit of the outpost, where they were revealed to see that one of the circular stone fragments that they had recovered appeared to be intact and was still held in place by the cable anchors. Even better, it appeared to be active. Within its circumstances, pale blue light seemed to vibrate, emanating a soft singing sound. Clusters of data ready to spill forth and coalesce into something. Perhaps the presence of the demon activated the artifact, because, well, by doing a bit of research, maybe the Reclaimers were the reason why these artifacts came back to life and started working again. These totems are known to respond in more peculiar ways to their kind. Siphon data now, Dakra spoke with urgency. No time to waste. They jumped into the pit arena and marched up to the machinery that had connected to the ring's totem. Clamps were attached to the lower sides of the ring, which ran under metal grated floors with many wires and cables connected to a computer console which displayed a holographic of the artifact. The Banished had grown quite adept at exploiting exotic alien technology, extracting power as the feedstock to fuel their own devices. This, however, was a different matter altogether. These data clusters were far more esoteric, yet they had been imbued into many structures and constructs on the Oth Karon. I am rerouting all remaining power from the outpost to the artifact dock. Yaham input a series of commands into the console, temporarily shutting down everything from nearby lights to kinetic launchers and inferior base machinery. Annex Ridge went completely dark, leaving the Study Master and the Skirmisher to completely await the power transfer's completion. Night began to fall on the nearby sun-pressed beneath the Oth Karon's fractured horizon. The blue veil of the sky rolled back as the abyss of the stars below painted a dark canvas, illuminating by a yellowish glow that lined the farthest edges of the installation's scattered landscape. The data clusters began to pour forth from the ring totems and settled as a thin mist on the ground. First, a form took the shape in the centre of the stone's ring. The installation's monitor, Despondent Pyre, then began to speak.
It is also a refuge. So many species have come to call this place home. Delightful forms of life that would have otherwise perished and remained forgotten after the firing of the array. Many such lives have looked upon these horizons, and in times much more harrowing than these. These ancient totems have made appropriate canvases on which to record some of this somber history. The Tudasia fashioned them long ago in reverence, or perhaps remorse, of the unknowable structure that they themselves called home. But their people's story is only one echo among many. These relics and the frail memories which accompany them are nearly all that remain of their kind.
Here Despondent Pyre drops a bombshell and tells us the real creator of these rings. These rings were a mystery throughout the entire Halo Infinite's campaign. I made countless videos trying to uncover what these were, theories on how they were created and why they were here, and how they were made, thinking that they were time locks, that they might have been from what the Primordial was essentially destroyed in, or a portal to somewhere else. But here we're told that the Tudasia were the ones that created them. These ancient totems were created to record the more somber history of their lives and what happened to them back then on the ring. Now, what could these rings symbolise? Well, it could be a ring representing each person that was taken and overrun by the horrors of the experiments and tests from within the Palace of Pain, of course led by Faber. But they could have also been created by the people that returned after from the Palace of Pain when they came out of that, different, unlike they were before they went in, with potentially the influence of the Gravemind or even Faber. But Despondent Pyre also mentions that they were built in reverence or remorse, respect or guilt. Now, we could go down a rabbit hole of theorising here, but Installation 07 is a ring with the deepest history, so who's to say that this isn't teasing what's to come in the next game? The Tudasia created these rings. They did it out of respect or guilt, but what were they being respectful or guilty of? Respectful of the people they'd lost, of course, potentially, but why guilt? Now, this is a big theory here, but I want to put it towards and put it forward to you guys, and I want you to basically tell me if I'm being crazy or not. What if the Endless were on Zeta Halo and visited the Tudasia, or even the ancient humans back then? What if at a time when they'd visited them, they'd already been tested in the Palace of Pain under the orders of Faber, and well, the Endless showed them that their powers of manipulating time. Some may have joined the Endless, or liked the sound of them, or wanted them to help, or to help them, but then others may have been wary of them. These are the sorts of things that could have been created in respect, so maybe these rings were created in respect and homage of the Endless, of them trying to help the Tudasia any way they could to take them back to a time where they weren't being tested on, or even try to get them to the point where they're trying to manipulate time to take them to a time where they don't have to go through this again with their family to save their families. You know, these are the sort of things that we have to think about here. But then, going back to the guilt side, the guilt could have been because of some of the Tudasia or some of the ancient humans not liking what the Endless were doing, didn't like the fact that potentially that if Faber found out, their entire family could be taken and killed or something like that. So maybe the guilt is that these ancient humans, or some of them, would have told rather Despondent Pyre of the location of the likes of the Endless, or they could have told Faber, and Faber then could have told Despondent Pyre because it was Despondent Pyre that came across them. Because think about it, when we interact with the rings in the campaign, Despondent Pyre talks about the Endless or refers to the secrets of the Endless. So why would she be doing that if they have nothing to do with the Endless? Look, I think this is a really interesting theory to think about here, because it's piecing existing historical lore with the likes of the historical and ancient humans, along with Faber, the Palace of Pain, and the experiments, along with the new faction that we know nothing about, the Endless. We know that they can manipulate time, and we know that they had to be contained, and of course the Criterion were the ones that went ahead and said they had to be that, and that was where they were on Zeta Halo. But the actual reason why we don't know just yet, and maybe this could be onto something. It could be something to do with Tadasia. Now, let me know your thoughts and opinions down below, but for me this is an interesting theory, and it goes into how the Endless were actually found as well, and why they were really imprisoned. Despondent Pyre was the monitor that discovered the Zalanim, but maybe they were discovered by her after she was discreetly told about them by the ancient humans, or they told Faber and Faber discreetly told Despondent Pyre. After all, Faber's tests were not ethical. They were done under the radar by hiding Zeta Halo from the Ecumene Council. So if Faber had told the Criterion himself, then it would have only raised more questions, but let me know your theories down below. The playback froze again, and Yaham's focus snapped towards his companion. "What do you see?" the Sangheili asked. He knew the skirmisher well enough that she would not interpret the gathering of knowledge such as this without reason. However, we get a final piece of dialogue from Despondent Pyre, and she speaks about her role on Zeta Halo.
A shining beacon, a whitewashed tomb, a hushed casket, a palace of pain. This ring is a monument to so many of my maker's sins. Like all empires, great care has always been taken to obfuscate the whole truth. Records partitioned, testimonies curated, victories accentuated. The greatest fear of the Forerunners was neither progeny nor plague. It was powerlessness, and it could not be tolerated.
The playback froze again, and Yaham's focus snapped towards his companion. "What do you see?" the Sangheili asked. He knew the skirmisher well enough that she would not interrupt the gathering. Of truth seemed to be changing more with every waking moment, and he was grateful for the glimpse into the galaxy's perilous past. By dipping into the deep wells of its history, what wisdom might help light the way to secure their future?
Of what service is guilt? To whom are we inevitably accountable? Is one sin greater than another? Is a lie of omission softer than outright perversion of the truth? Are my crimes greater than those of mendicant bias, or the master builder? What of the didact himself? Is there a difference between orders given or orders followed? My burden is impossible to understand. The harm, the history, the weight this ring carries, the gravity of its deeds. They were made silent. Should I make myself the same to atone? Am I a watchtower or a warden?
I think here Despondent Pyre is speaking about the Endless and also the Flood. She mentions Mendicant Bias, Faber, and even the Didact. She's placing herself within that category, so let's just quickly break down what each one of them did to give everyone a bit of a refresher. Mendicant Bias was infected by the Logic Plague and worked with the Primordial in an attempt to use the Flood to take over the galaxy and eventually the universe. Faber, experimenting on all of the ancient humans in the Tigrar, hiding these horrific acts from the Ecumene Council, and yeah, basically helping in the extinction of them. And to the Didact, his hatred towards humanity after he'd led the Forerunner army against them, continuing that in Halo 4 as well, after he'd woken up, potentially also being affected by some form of Logic Plague. Despondent Pyre here is referring to her secrets that she's kept. but she's also the unethical orders that she's followed. After all, she does say this: is there a difference between orders given or orders followed? Despondent Pyre didn't understand why the Criterion ordered the entire race of the Endless to be imprisoned, but she asked no questions and just followed the orders. She is feeling guilty. As she said at the very beginning of this article, she is not a watcher, she feels more like a warden. And that's exactly what she is, a warden of the Endless and the secrets within this ring and what is buried beneath it. This is Despondent Pyre feeling like she has sinned greatly. But of course now she's been destroyed, and of course now we do have another monitor on Zeta Halo that is going to have to learn all of the secrets and essentially be what Despondent Pyre was. But guys, that is it for this video. It's a long one, I do apologise for that, but I wanted to make sure I got everything in this video and just go through it in everything that we could. So we have 2 members of the Banished. In order to summarise quickly, we have 2 members of the Banished. We have, both of them are researchers. One of them is a Kigyar and one of them is a Sanghili. And from that point onwards, they're trying to figure out what's going on with these rings. So we found out that the Tazasia were the ones that created these rings all the way back then, rather out of respect or guilt. What was that respect or guilt for? Could it have been the Endless basically meeting them or trying to help them, but some of them didn't want it? Could it have been just because of the people that were being experimented on that came out of the Palace of Pain? Could it be something to do with the Flood? We don't really know at this point. There are many things we can theorize on and go into and talk about, but what we do know is they were created by the Tijara. But what we do know is how the rings were now created. So that is one thing we can tick off. We now also know a little bit more around things that are on Zeta Halo that have now been mentioned in the lore by Despondent Pyre in recent lore, which is the likes of the Palace of Pain, which is the likes of Faber, which is the likes of Mendicant and the Primordial and stuff like that. So all of this is now coming back into modern Halo, which is so exciting. So going into the next game, what do I think is going to happen? Well, I think that all of this is going to be touched upon. It has to be touched upon. You cannot talk about this now and then not reference it or show it going into the next Halo game. And I think a lot of this was meant to be in Halo Infinite DLC that of course was canned very early on. And I'm so gutted about that. I think we're going to see offensive on Mendicant. I think we're going to go into this in a way that, again, from Halo 3 Terminals, Mendicant was trying to help the Master Chief. And I think we're going to see a lot of this as well with the likes of the Primordial being mentioned. Not only that, we're going to meet the Endless and understand how or why they were imprisoned and why the Criterion and Despondent Pyre needed to do that. And I think we're going to learn a lot more about the Ancient Humans as well. A lot more lore for them too. But let me know your thoughts and opinions down below, everyone. It's been a long video, but I've really enjoyed getting back to Halo lore. I love this game and love this universe so much, and I can't wait to do this more if more lore does come out. So stay tuned to the channel, subscribe if you guys are brand new, if you want to stick around for that too. And make sure you leave a like on today's video for going back to Halo lore. But leave your comments down below, guys. What do you think of this? If you have any theories, please do let me know also. But have a great Christmas, everyone, and a great new year. And we'll see you guys next year for a great 2025. Be you guys. Take care, guys. Speak soon.